In this video, we're going to find the inverse of the function f of x equals negative 3x squared plus 13, where x is greater than or equal to 0. This part at the end, where x is greater than or equal to 0, really tells us what values of x we can use so that the function has an inverse. That is because this would normally fail the horizontal line test that we use to check if a function has an inverse. So we're using just the values where it would pass. So you're allowed to trust that that helps you and that you're allowed to find the inverse for this particular problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by rewriting it, where instead of f of x, we have y. So y equals negative 3x squared plus 13. Then we're going to swap the x and the y. So everywhere there's a y, we're going to write an x. And everywhere there's an x, we're going to write a y. This is going to allow us to now solve for the y. We're going to start by moving that 13 over. So we're going to subtract 13 on both sides. That's going to give us x minus 13 equals negative 3y squared. Now we need to, again, trying to get the y by itself, divide by negative 3. This gives us x minus 13 over negative 3 is equal to y squared. So now we need to get y by itself. We're going to get rid of the square. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. Now, when you take a square root, you generally have to account for the plus or the minus at the front. That's because when you square something, its sign will always turn into a positive no matter what. However, in this case, because in our original function, x is greater than or equal to 0, this means that in our inverse function, y has to be greater than or equal to 0. Because remember, we swap our x and our y. So that really means when we're looking at what we have here, our y is going to be the positive square root of x minus 13 over negative 3, because again, it has to be greater than or equal to 0, so it has to be a positive value. So even though it's plus minus when we solve, we choose to keep just the positive. Now that negative in the denominator there, it's a little weird. It didn't go away when we solved. So I do recommend treating it like a negative x minus 13 like that over 3. But it is technically still the same, right? Then our last thing to do is write this as an inverse function. So f inverse of x, we're just replacing the y with the f inverse. We have the square root of negative x minus 13 over 3. And that is the inverse function in this case.